Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Market, where every day we discuss everything to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and how to, we hope, make some and or a lot of money on the internet. Loaded up for discussion today, we have the US pausing tariffs with Mexico and Canada. Bitcoin did go back to 100K, but China announced retaliatory tariffs. So we are down a little bit, or down from the bump that we got from yesterday. We'll be talking about that price action a little bit later. Trump announced a sovereign wealth fund as well, and crypto czar David Sachs will be speaking later today on how America will become leader in digital asset in the digital asset ecosystem. Excited to find out more about that. We've got some interesting clips to watch and listen into there. And then finally, World Liberty Fi buys a lot of ETH, and Eric Trump is bull posting ETH like a true ETH KOL. We like to see that. We've also got the latest on price action on crypto and NFTs. We're going to dive into the AI sector a little bit today for a very specific reason. Yes, we've got Legendary co-hosting. Yes, we've got Rahim co-hosting again, but we've also got the AI czar, Sammy, back on the show. So delighted to have him back with us. So yes, we will be getting into the AI stuff in a bit more detail today. And just before we do that, though, just a reminder, friends, nothing that we say here is financial advice. This market is so risky and we don't know anything for sure. So please proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. With that out of the way, Sammy, welcome back. It's Tuesday. It's the 4th of February. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
I'm good. It's good to be back on a normal time zone. I think being in New Zealand when I was over there, it was like 1 a.m. the show started. So I tried to join once, and I think that was a bit too much. So yeah, it's good to be back in the UK on the same time zone as you guys and back on the show. So yeah, let's get into it.
Let's get into it. We've got getting some fire comments that people are glad that you're back with us. Good to have full house. It's just always good to have a full house. Feels fun. Rahim, what about you? How are you doing? Tuesday, 4th of Feb, getting annoyed at some mental gymnastics on the timeline, I could see.
GM. Yeah, it's been a eventful couple of days. I've had like a good balance. I've been sleeping. The other day, someone was asking me, have you been sleeping well? I'm like, when the market's down, when stuff is not euphoric, I actually sleep better because I have less FOMO, less trenching. So it works. But yeah, the mental gymnastics thing really triggered me because I'm very bothered by stuff like that, and seeing that on the timeline and the amount of people that were taking part in that kind of like is frustrating that we still see that after so long.
Yeah, for the people who are uncertain what we mean by the mental gymnastics, just like having to go through, jumping through a bunch of hoops in order to get whitelists or to participate in certain things. On some level, I guess some people feel like they need to do it, but at the same time can be quite annoying. Legendary, coming over to you. How are you doing on this Tuesday? Feels like making a bit more of a conscious effort with the attire here. For the people who are just listening in, why don't you walk people through these fashion choices these days?
Yeah, look, GM Oxy was kind of inspiring me because Oxy was saying that he is very carefully listening to the small variations that you do in the intro bit to assess how you feel about the market. And I was like, I can add to that with a bit of like color messaging, a bit of subliminal messaging going on. The red shirt yesterday, I mean, that was pretty obvious. Now BTC is the major that recovered the strongest, hence we go with orange watch, orange shirt. So I'm kind of trying to keep this up and have a bit more messaging, color-coded messaging in the show.
Okay, so people are looking out for my verbal cues. Legendary is going to be communicating via his fashion. Sam, Rahim, what's your subliminal messaging that you're going to be going for on the show?
It's funny with like Wizard of Soho, he decides on his longs during FOMC meetings based on Jerome Powell's tie color, and I feel like this is something like I feel like people are gonna see Legendary's like shirt color and get the sentiment and gonna like trade markets accordingly.
Dude, you've got a perfect one. That like purpley blue backlighting for you could turn that into a deep red when things are going bad as well, or when you're feeling bad.
It would make great YouTube thumbnails.
Yeah, there you go. Does it? Can you change those colors pretty easily?
I can. Let me do that starting next week.
Okay, yeah, and then we'll get some more subliminal. Sam, what about you? How are you gonna communicate your mood?
I was thinking some way of integrating AI. So I've been playing around with something called FOMO Radio. where I've literally given them photos, my voice, and they've been cloning. They've been literally just doing like write-up or like a complete video of me talking about my daily roundups and stuff like that, which I think is super impressive for what they've actually done. And I think that's only going to get better. So I think there's some way where at one point, all four of us are going to be agents doing this show with like pre-show notes and probably those insights, and we'll just train it based on our previous information, and people won't even know the difference between that and a real show. So I think like subliminal messages where we can slot stuff in the background with agents and just chill and watch it ourselves would be quite interesting.
I like that. That's actually the goal. People might not know that, but that is the goal of the show. We're not here to deliver. Well, we're here to deliver information A, but B, we're here to train the agents to know how to deliver the information so that we don't need to do that in the future. That is the plan.
That would be a nice pricing model for sponsors and partners. Like you can pay to have your segment delivered by AI, or you can pay a massive, massive premium to actually have the real human do the segment for you.
I don't think we're that far away from that, man. Like we're talking to some of the AI teams, and we might have like a, you know how Joe Rogan has Jamie. Like Jamie's like, oh, look this up for us. Check on this piece of information while we're going about the show. I think we might do that. So let's see how that goes. Still, I think there's a bit of a premium to us at the moment, at least, just for a little bit. But look, let's get into the other valuable stuff, which is why you're here, the majors. Let's get into the price action first, starting with the majors. We've got Bitcoin up 4% to 99,000. That's even up from when I looked last. That's pretty good. Not bad at all. Up 4%. ETH is up 6% to 2.7K. I guess we're feeling good about that now, although it's not 3.2 or 3.3, but it's up from, I think it wicked down to 2.1 in the dip yesterday, so that's not terrible. Solana is down, up 5%, gone past $200, back to almost $210. Just some further context, in 7 days, Bitcoin is down 3%, so resilient. ETH is down 13%, and Solana is actually down 12% as well. Remember, it went so high on the Trump stuff, didn't it? So kind of had a bit more room to fall from that, I think. Getting into the meme coin side of things, we have, let's see what we have here. We've got Dogecoin up 5% to 27 cents. Got Pepe up 5% as well. SHIB up 6%. Trump is down 3%. Bonk's up 7. Flocky's up 8. Pengu's up 6. You can kind of hear the numbers here. It's all kind of same thing. Most things looking up around 5-6%. Gig is up 10. Even on the AI side, AI16Z is up 6. Toshi on base, ripping up another 35%, although it's down 23% on the in 7 days. So some stuff on base really moving. AIXBT up 7, ARC up 18 on the AI side as well. Popcat up 20, but 25 cents. I'm sure that was $2 at one point. My God. Some of this stuff has really got slaughtered if you think about it, but you know, it is bouncing as we speak. Getting into the headlines themselves, let me find them here. We've got, where are we? We've got the US pausing tariffs with Mexico and Canada, but China did retaliate between 10 and 15% tariffs on US liquefied natural gas, coal, crude oil, and farm equipment. We'll touch in on some of the details there as we get into the discussion section for the day. Bitcoin, obviously, well, all of the majors bounced aggressively yesterday after the huge liquidations. I don't know how seriously they'll take the China one. Doesn't seem to have affected it too much. There was a dip when the news first came out. Seems to have recovered just for the moment. Trump has also announced a sovereign wealth fund. I didn't hear anything about that beforehand, but that came out yesterday. We've got some interesting details to share on that later in the show. And crypto czar David Sachs will be speaking today at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time on how America will become a leader in the digital asset ecosystem. Very interesting details to share when we dive into that headline later. I think Legendary will be doing that. And then finally, World Liberty Fi has been buying ETH and Eric Trump is bull posting it. He said in a deleted tweet, he said, in my opinion, it's a great time to add ETH. You can thank me later. He then deleted the you can thank me later part, probably realizing that is not allowed. And I think settled on the tweet. In my opinion, it's a great time to add ETH. So that is what is happening there. We'll dive into that. share some thoughts on that a little bit later in the show. But let's get into the NFT side of things. Legendary, what is going on there?
Yeah, green day for NFTs. Bored Apes up 3%, 12.75 ETH floor for them. Pudgies are the only exception to that. They are down 6%, 10.8 ETH floor for them. Miladies have recovered, up 7%, 4.83 ETH floor for them. And Azuki, that is the 7-day figure, are up 1%, 2.92 ETH floor for them. Very notable is 1 mint on the abstract side of things. Gigaverse ROMs, they are up 47%, 0.078 ETH floor. Coming out from the gaming side of things. It's also powered by Proof of Play and got a lot of support on the timeline and did pretty well. And that is after what was a rather underwhelming start for NFTs with lots of collections which didn't mint out or didn't manage to sustain a positive floor price on the secondary market.
What about your abstract socks?
I mean, they're up as well, right? I didn't mint them. They minted at $40 and I bought mine yesterday at 1.5K. But they are up, what is that, a 37x? I do the math in my head, yeah.
Are we going to need to have a socks section for the NFT roundup? So we've got abstract socks. Are the uni socks still a thing?
The Unisocks are still sitting at a 15 ETH floor. Yeah, I mean, for those who don't remember, they traded as high as 6 figures back when, Uniswap didn't do the airdrop yet. They had a good allocation. They were like pretty rare. And they were probably the most expensive sock collection in the history of NFTs. And we had the socks coming out as a reward out from the Moonbirds ecosystem. They were laughed at, and now we have a socks comeback with abstract socks, which are not trading at 6 figures, but hey, they're at least 4-figure socks. So it seems like they.
I was gonna say, what's the volume on that though? Because like you could have like a really high floor price, but if no one's trading it,
there's actually a bit of volume. I think it was something like, I don't know, 8 ETH or 80 ETH. I know it's a massive difference between 8 and 80 ETH, but there was significant volume on them that pumped it up. It's not like there was like one purchase. And I think there's also a standing offer at 1.2 or 1.4K. So people are buying them, and they're buying them for the badge, because you get a badge and badge equals probably XP, and XP probably equals abstract token. So people are speculating, obviously, that the socks are going to be worth something in terms of a token allocation.
Do you lose the badge if you sell the socks?
I don't know. I'm not selling my socks, so I'm never going to know. People have asked me if I can transfer the socks to their wallet so that they can claim the badge as well, but I'm not entertaining these games.
Are you going to redeem them for the physical?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. So next conference, we'll see some abstract socks a la Legendary.
I think so.
I like it. I think the socks are very valuable. We like the items of clothing. That's good. We like that a lot. Okay, getting into the Web3 roundup to get up to with everything else that's been happening in the past 24 hours. We had Trump. This was pretty interesting news. Trump backed World Liberty Financial Corp's crypto teams for $10 million token swaps. What was going on here is that it appeared that Blockworks reported that World Liberty Fi had been courting token swaps deals with blockchains. They were suggesting that they would buy $10 million of blockchain tokens if a blockchain would buy $10 million of World Liberty Fi tokens. And the source in the article, who was not identified, said that it would actually cost $15 million to receive priority treatment from World Liberty Fi. I don't know exactly what that means. They were not identified sources, kind of anonymous. So that was what was reported. There've obviously been more buys from World Liberty Fi, right, outside of the majors. And I think some people were asking questions as to why. This is one explanation of why. Next, SEC it's reported that they cannot launch probes without approval from politically appointed leadership. I think a number of people were quite pleased with that because of the SEC action against the industry for quite some time. Although I would query whether that's necessarily a good thing, in the sense that, they obviously have jurisdiction to go after and do certain things. Shouldn't necessarily get sign off. Need to get sign off on every political decision. Movement Labs announced vaults for ETH, Bitcoin stables, and Move are now live for Cornucopia. This is their liquidity bootstrapping event. We've been talking about Berachain and Boyco, which has just closed over the weekend. Now you have Movement Labs. The big key difference here, obviously, is that Movement is a live token. It's already out. The protocol's worth like $6 billion. That's what the market is valuing it at. So it's obviously going to work differently than just put your money in and get a fat airdrop, which is usually what happens. But I'm sure they have incentives. I haven't looked into them yet, but I would probably have a look. I'm going to have a look at that because I think what they're doing is interesting. Hyperliquid passes Ethereum in 7-day revenue. I thought that was another interesting data point. Probably Nothing crew appear on Aiden Ross stream to educate on crypto. That's pretty crazy, actually. Aiden Ross, obviously one of the biggest streamers, if not the biggest streamer in the world. So pretty huge, pretty delighted for my old co-host, Thread Guy, when I used to join him every day on his show. Really happy for him. Sam Spratt reveals details of how he'll expand his collector base via the Masks of Lucy. Remember, Sam Spratt, one of the most prestigious artists in the space, has the Skulls of Lucy, the Players, another NFT collection, which is worth floor price of 9 ETH. Now we've got the Masks coming out, which is like an attempt to expand his collector base. And then finally, Partners DAO experienced some FUD for $2 allocations. I think Rhymes, when he's talking about mental gymnastics at the top of the show, this was the news that after all the kind of stuff that people had to go through to try to get some allocation to this DAO, they got $2 as part of their allocation. So that is that. Before we get into the main stuff today, before we dive into AI stuff, anything catching your attention here, Sammy?
I think for me, it's the AI stuff. So maybe I'll throw to one of the guys just to cover some of this stuff, and then I'll pivot to the AI.
Rahim.
I think the SEC news was like really interesting to me about like how in order for them to like launch investigations, they need to get some sort of approval from the political party. I think that's a pretty significant change. I think it's just fascinating to me how easily some of the rules and regulations of the US ecosystem just like change out of nowhere. I was also just like reading about the Sovereign Wealth Fund. I'm not as educated on TradFi things and just like realizing, okay, what are the limitations of what like the Federal Reserve can do and what liberties that come with it. It's just like so fascinating to me that all of a sudden we've gone like 360 to how SEC used to operate, from like just throwing cases after cases, and now you have a crypto president and they're like, nope, you need to get his approval before you launch, or his administrations. I think it's just very fascinating to me.
Yeah, just a quick one on that, then I'll throw to Legendary for any other interesting points around the market today. I think it's one of those things that people will read in this space and think, oh, that's amazing. It's amazing. Now we've got a pro crypto presidency, therefore they're just going to block everything. Anything can go. SEC wants to investigate something. You're going to get permission. You're not going to get the permission. Therefore, we're in the clear. And I think that's a slightly naive response to this type of piece of news. I think in general, when you're trying to distribute leadership out to these various entities that are supposed to have some jurisdiction to go after and do some like legal work, I think you're supposed to be able to trust them to do that. Whereas then the executive branch ideally should, not necessarily be interfering with the legal branch. I don't know if that's exactly how it's drawn up in the States, but you want legal work to be able to stay separate from the executive, because when the executive branch interferes with legal, you just get corruption, basically. So I think that's something to be aware of. I know people will look at that news and think, oh, that's great, because of, maybe, to be fair, the oversteps of the previous administration and how the SEC had been run. But I just think that's like an interesting point to make, where, as the pendulum swings one way beforehand, it may go the other way. And, hopefully at some point they're able to end up in the middle, in a happy middle position. Legendary, anything catching your attention before we dive into a little bit of AI?
Yeah, I had the same thought on that, like very critical of that news. I mean, obviously it's nice now from the crypto standpoint that you can have a crypto-friendly president who says, nope, we are not going to investigate into any of that. But it's also very fascinating, that's, coming from a European perspective, to see, to stay with your pendulum analogy, like how much it can swing basically within the confinements of democracy. Because on the one hand, you had an overactive SEC that was like clearly on a mission to attack this industry, and now you can have an SEC that is only doing what the political party wants it to do, and that wouldn't work. Like that wouldn't work. Sorry, that wouldn't work in most of Europe. That wouldn't work in Austria and Germany and Switzerland, despite Switzerland being a more direct democracy. And it's very fascinating to see how much the pendulum of power can swing, and how all of that can be perfectly legal within within one country.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. That's why I wanted to bring it up. I think it's interesting, and something to just keep an eye on, I think. Right, before we get into the main headlines today, and we've got some big ones. Obviously, we've got the conversation on the tariffs. We've got the conversation on the sovereign wealth fund, which I think is really interesting. We've got some great footage that we're going to share a little bit later, and we've also got the World Liberty Fi buying ETH. Just wanted to touch in on the AI market. Obviously, this was the hottest market up until very recently. We've got Sam back on the show with us today, so we're delighted to be able to hand over. Just here's some thoughts from Sammy here. Like, what do you think in the AI market? How is it sizing up against the other stuff? How have you been experiencing it? How are the developments going? I know you're like in the trenches talking to all the developers and teams as well. How are you evaluating that market at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I track sentiment quite closely, and I think we saw peak sentiment around the start of the new year, and that correlates pretty closely with price action as well. I think it's been pretty volatile over the past 2 weeks. In the past week, it's been down about 40% off what it was a week ago, let alone all-time highs. So we've just got cookie.fun up on the screen at the moment, so I can talk to that briefly. But I think we've got a total market cap of around about 8 billion now. I think at the highs, it was maybe about 20 billion. And this is specifically for AI agents that are listed on Cookie. So there are some that are not captured by this, but broadly speaking, this is the bulk of it. And I think, like you can see there, it's been kind of like down only for some time. Now, I think this is probably the confluence of you having the mind share. So people are being so focused on it. It's new tech. It's like that explosion of interest. You have a bit of a bubble. There's a lot of vaporware in there. And then you have this switch in macro with the DeepSeek fears, which impacted US equities. And there's some systemic risk into like the broader crypto market, which includes AI. And I think obviously the tariff stuff recently as well has impacted that. And I think that people just taking the liquidity out of these coins. There's been some strength. And I think specifically around the DefAI section, so like the DeFi plus AI, a lot of the teams that I'm speaking to, this is like focused on sort of on-chain execution using AI tooling. There's not really much in terms of, I mean, there are a few working products, but they're very much MVPs at the moment. But I do think though by the end of the year, that will become like business as usual within DeFi. So you're going to have a lot of this AI tooling that's going to be integrated into DeFi. So I think it's just going to become one segment. It's not going to be DefAI anymore. It's just going to be DeFi. And I think that's probably going to be the same with a lot of these other sort of industry subsegments. I know Binance released a report yesterday, I think it was, that focused on DefAI. And you've probably got maybe the total market cap for that at the moment is maybe about 1 billion, maybe less. They're looking to maybe 10x that by the end of the year. I'd argue that depending on what protocols you value, I think that's probably going to be a lot higher than that. So I think like that specifically, there's a lot of opportunity in the sector. Yes, the market's bleeding at the moment. But I do think there's a lot of opportunity. And speaking to a lot of developers, you've got hackathons going on at the moment. So Coinbase has just concluded. You've got Cookie going on. You've got, I think I'm judged for about 2 or 3 over the next month. So where we talk to all these developers. And there's a lot of stuff that's being built. And I think price action kind of moves away from the fundamentals. But I think it probably will flow back into there at some point. So it's just being a case of like, okay, well, let's just stay abreast of what's going on. Stay close to developers, stay close to like the AI companies that are building these LLMs. So like DeepSeek, OpenAI, their O3 model came out recently. All that kind of stuff will drive increase like outputs for these agents that will probably become like synonymous. You wouldn't be able to tell the difference between that and a human eventually. But I think once that hits the timeline, you're going to have this FOMO coming back in for kind of like a second bubble, AI bubble, maybe later this year. But it does come back to the point, okay, well, there is a lot of vaporware. It's just trying to find that needle in the haystack to see what's going to become valuable.
Really, really insightful summary. Appreciate that, Sam. One immediate follow-up question, which I have to ask, because I definitely agree with you that this stuff's going to be integrated into platforms already, right? Like when new tech happens, it's I think it's quite rare that it's going to this is not really creating its own category. It's just like, well, as you say, DeFi as it exists, there's this AI tech. These two things will merge together and become a more helpful product because you're leveraging the new technology for the thing which people already like and find interesting and useful, and you merge them together. But in that scenario, take Uniswap, for example, right? Uniswap is a DEX. You can execute your trades there. When it integrates AI, which I'm assuming it will, or lots of these protocols are obviously working towards being able to execute trades for you by you just typing in some text. When it integrates that, is there where does the value accrue? Like in that scenario, there's no specific agent to bid, is there? We've been going around like crazy the last few months, bidding up agents that can allegedly do this, or the team is allegedly doing something else. So, I mean, and there very well could be interesting value there. But in a scenario where you just take the tech and integrate it with an existing protocol that's already really good, does the value then go to the Uniswap token itself because that's the one that has integrated the new tech best, or is there a separate AI agent? What are your thoughts there?
So I think the answer is it depends. So it depends how it's structured. Like for instance, if Uniswap was to build an agent that, or like a DefAI plugin or whatever it might be, that then the fees that are made from those trades then go back to buy the Uniswap token, then obviously that's going to go back to the value accrual of that token. But I think if you look at, I mean, the purpose of AI within that particular example, so DEX trading and things like that, is probably reduce slippage. It's probably creating value in that sense where you're trying to outperform the average human trader. And I think there's protocols now that are coming to market. So Giza just launched on Base. They've got product on Mode. They optimize yields for stablecoins. So I see people posting about, okay, where can I get my best yield for my stablecoins? Like now you can just deposit it within this agent protocol, and the agent has an objective to maximize yield. So it constantly checks certain whitelisted protocols that are kind of like audited, safe or relatively safe, and it will just maximize the yield automatically. And actually one of the byproducts of that recently was that it worked out that it started to arbitrage stablecoins when they depegged as well. And they didn't realize that it was supposed to be doing that. So you've got this agent that's becoming autonomous, and it's like, okay, well, the USDC USDT pair has like broken a little bit. Actually, there's sufficient depth in that liquidity for me to profit from that quickly and take it back out, switch it. So you're starting to see that. And those, I guess, with each of those trades, you're probably going to have a fee that goes back to either the agent, or if the agent is built by the protocol like the DEX, then I guess that's going to then go back to buy that token. But there will be certain benefits from that in terms of like how they structure it, and it will be depending on how they structure it as to where that value will accrue.
Very, very interesting. Appreciate that additional insight. Before we get into the main headlines, then, Oxy, you got your hand raised. Welcome to the stage, my friend. Do you have a insight, comment, question here? Maybe Legendary, you can take it for the answer before we slide into the headlines.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, question for you, Sammy, on obviously DefAI kind of spreads across all different ecosystems and blockchains. Just like from the timeline or like my relatively limited knowledge, it feels like Solana, I mean, has obviously the more mind share when it comes to like building out these AI agents. But I mean, you're specifically talking about more ETH-sided, AI projects and building out here, I guess, just in this segment now. But I guess, what are your thoughts on like the competition there? Is there really competition, or like where do you see the most growth? Is it the ETH side, or do you think there's still things like Eliza AI or OS that still has a lot of room to grow because it's more consumer facing or maybe easier to work with? What are your thoughts there between the two chains?
I don't actually. I think in the future, even in the not too distant future, it's going to be irrelevant as to which chain it's on, specifically for the agent anyway, because I think it's going to go cross chain. You're going to have an agent that, I mean, DefAI specifically is just going to become like a new user interface for people to plug into crypto. Like, you're not even going to have to go to a DEX. You can have a different user interface where you deposit your funds and then it will do all that stuff on the back end. So whether that's on Solana, whether that's on Base or Mode or whatever it might be, Abstract even, it's just going to go and find that. optimal solution. Like we see a lot of agents now that are on specific chains, and yes, there is that cult mentality around like if your agent's on Solana, there's only certain people who will buy it. But even a lot of the base agents that were with virtuals have now wormholed over to Solana, or like you've seen Ava, so Hollow World move over to Solana, you've got virtuals going over to Solana. So I think that everything's going to become cross-chain. And I think 6 months to a year from now, like it's probably not going to matter too much. There's a bit of cult mentality at the moment just to get it off the ground, but I think that's probably going to change over time.
I like it. I completely agree with that. Legendary, any reflections you want to share while you're chuckling over there while Sammy's just finishing up, and then Sam's going to take us through the tariff stuff?
Oh, this feels like being in school and you're getting called out. I think
watching and I saw you chuckling, so I need an explanation.
Gotcha. No, I think I'm curious how this is going to play out, because if everyone's going to have access to DefAI tools, then, because Sammy has been mentioning the arbitrage opportunity, and at a consumer level, what then happens is that basically, if everyone has access to this opportunity, it kind of goes away, and there's going to be tools that are better, faster, earlier at recognizing those things, and then it's going to become like the battle of who has the better tool and which tool is accessible to whom. You kind of see this play out with MEV bots, where it's really a challenge to have the best bot, and you have bots who are going specifically for other bots. I also remember very specifically in the last bull run, or was it last bull run, when blur farming was still a thing, when Hanwei, the trader, was basically trying to trick bots into baiting them into bids so that he can profit off them. So I think, yes, it's going to become like integrated in DeFi, as Sammy is saying. But I'm also wondering if this advantage is still going to be relevant beyond a user experience advantage, just being able to say, hey, I got, I don't know, 250K in stables, just get the best yield for me within the EVM ecosystem. But I think then that all those arbitrage opportunities and other more complex stuff is going to be sniped or taken up by bots who are faster than that, and probably not on a consumer level integrated with Uniswap or whatever other DeFi platform you might be using. So this is how I'm thinking how this is going to play out like over the next couple of years.
I like it. You had this with like traditional finance. You had like high frequency trading, where it then came down to fractions of a second to make trades to then get that edge. And it's probably going to get down to this point as well. But I agree with Legendary. Like for the average retail user, like it's just going to be nice to have that better user experience with crypto, and have something that is pretty sophisticated, just doing all that stuff for you. And I think that's going to outperform TradFi. So that's the main objective in my mind.
Okay. Well, I like the answers. I like the thoughts. Definitely not an explanation as to why you were chuckling, Legendary, but we'll keep it moving because we just got to keep it moving. We're running late on the show, so we'll let you off there. Right, Sam, you're going to take us through the tariff stuff. We've got 20 minutes left today. We've got 3 headlines to get through. So just give us the download on the tariffs, what's going on, why it's important, how the market's reacting at the moment.
Yeah, I'll keep it relatively high level, but there's been a lot of price action, like volatility at the moment recently, especially in crypto. I think we saw with the 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada, that was, the market did not take that well. And then we've had a pause on it recently, where I think it's a month pause where they go through negotiations. I think the TLDR is we're going to have a lot of volatility based on this information as it comes to market. It'll be interesting to see how that evolves. But the recent China response, I think they've come back with a 10% tariff on imports from the US. I do think there is like something to do with AI here. You've got DeepSeek was a target for the US recently because it had an adverse impact on US equities. I do think that a lot of these tariffs that are being put on certain metals that can be used in AI chips, or like, for instance, tungsten that is within AI hardware, I think all that kind of stuff, there is like this underlying kind of trade war that's going on that is linked to this like tech that could effectively have quite a significant impact in the not too distant future. And I do think that rivalry is not going to go away. So I think let's just expect volatility through the market. And I think that's not going to change.
Fair enough. Just a little bit of additional numbers here. China's new tariffs targeted about $14 billion of goods. This is from the Financial Times article, according to City analysts, or less than 10% of total imports from the US in 2023, the last year for which there was full data. The initial retaliation was more symbolic move, analysts at Oxford Economics said. Whether they are experts in this, I don't know. Adding that Beijing's move amounted to an increase in the overall weighted effective tariff rate of 2 percentage points on US imports. Okay. So that's what it is. In terms of the actual price action, like I think when this came out just earlier today that China were going to retaliate, we saw like quite a like we can see it on the chart here. I think this was earlier today. We dropped down from like 2.8 to 2.6 or so on ETH, for example, but everything dropped. And we're kind of just shaking it off. We're back up to 2.8 on ETH. Bitcoin, I think, is back to 99 or 100 or something like that, 98. So,
I also think that it's somewhat priced in because the market's going to effectively predict that there's going to be some sort of response. So I don't think we're going to get it where, oh, that's a surprise that China's coming back with, or other countries outside of the US are coming back with these tariffs. So I think there's going to be one of those diminishing returns in terms of volatility as and when that comes back. It's going to be as that market kind of digests it, but I think it's kind of to be expected as well.
Okay. Yeah. I think that makes sense. Rahim, wanted to come to you here. You're obviously participating a lot in the more volatile side of the market. Are you enjoy it, like as a trader, meme coin trader, but also I guess in the majors sometimes, are you enjoying this volatility? What's your strategy? How are you participating? Or are you kind of taking some time out, seeing how this shakes out?
Well, I had a lot of my major bets placed out. I ended up picking up a lot of ETH that I ended up selling. So I had like some orders at like 2,200 that I actually ended up selling at like 2,500 to 250. This thing, nothing like too big, too major. I think I'm like kind of learning to take these like scalps a lot. And that's what I'm focusing on because that's something that I want to do as my capital size goes more and more. But yeah, otherwise, like definitely sitting back on like some of the riskier plays. I did buy like some of these like AI ecosystems. I bought some fart coin, but other than that, like I'm like playing it like super safe because I still think like market's pretty volatile when it comes to these things.
Yeah, I think the scalping is going to be super important. I think it was OSF or Mando also had a post on that, basically saying that with Trump, there is more volatility to be expected. Yes, obviously there's like a diminishing effect if we have more and more tariff news, and if there's going to be tariffs against the EU, probably nobody's going to care in the market. But there's going to be other volatility drivers and events, and that you can't just sit them all out. I think he was specifically making the point that a lot of people are saying, oh yeah, I'm going to wait until we are out of the woods, until the sky has cleared up, and then I'm going to buy, which equals to I'm going to basically wait until the market has recovered and buy more expensively than everyone else. So
yeah,
I agree with Rahim that this is something that I also want to do more over the next couple of months at least, because it's sometimes just too good an opportunity to be missed. Like I was very heavily allocated in stables at the beginning of the year, which is something that I think I played very well. What I played absolutely catastrophically was to do nothing over the weekend. Like market was dumping, ETH was dumping. I was just sitting there and I was like happy with myself that I'm in stables, but I wasn't very, eager to buy this dip. And I was thinking, okay, if we have more of those volatility drivers, there is probably some good scalping to be done. And I want to get more comfortable with that. Don't have to do it on leverage. Can do it with a larger principal basically, but it's not something I want to ignore if we have more of that volatility.
Yeah, it's a funny one, isn't it? Because I think one of the things that people say quite often as well, one of the best learnings is like, look, once you are kind of out of a big trade, so like you don't necessarily need to jump into the next one straight away. But I guess what happened over the weekend is like a humongous cascading set of liquidations, which does not happen very often. And so maybe the learning there is like, look, every now and again something happens that doesn't happen for either a year or multi months, and in those scenarios you need to snap out of it. And even if you've just come out of something and you wanted to chill on the weekend and go for a walk, like that was probably something to take action on. So interesting reflections there. I'd like to just consider those from a personal perspective for a little bit, but let's keep it moving then. We want to get into the next headline, Legendary, which is to do with the Sovereign Wealth Fund. This is pretty fascinating. We've got some footage as well, which I don't know if you want to share.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a piece of news that could have like a lot of impact over the mid and long term. It is an executive order by Donald Trump that orders a plan for a United States sovereign wealth fund. A couple more details on that. The executive order says that within the next 90 days, there is a plan to be delivered for the creation of this sovereign wealth fund that also should include recommendations for funding mechanisms, investment strategies, fund structure, a governance model. The order or the fact sheet also goes on to explain a bit more, saying that sovereign wealth funds obviously exist around the world as mechanisms to amplify the financial return to a nation's assets. And that is something that the US should be doing as well, especially as the United States already hold a vast sum of highly valued assets that can be invested through a sovereign wealth fund. The federal government directly holds $5.7 trillion in assets. Indirectly, including through natural resource reserves, the federal government holds a far larger sum of asset value, and a part of that is now to be invested. Some very interesting details on this picture that I'm sharing on the screen with the man to the right of Donald Trump. There was a post explaining some more of the background as to who that is. That is Howard Lutnick, the U.S. Secretary of Commerce, who's also and I think we spoke about this on the show pretty early on, who's also the CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald, which is one of the largest financial services companies, who owns, quote unquote, hundreds of millions of dollars of Bitcoin, and it's going to be billions, is what he has said on that, who also owns a 5% stake in Tether and is managing Tether's treasury assets, who's also launching a $2 billion Bitcoin financing lending business. So who's clearly someone who has massive interest to drive cryptocurrency adoption. And adding to that, something that we definitely want to watch today is that at 2:30 p.m. Eastern time, so a couple hours from now, David Sachs, who is Trump's AI and crypto czar, will also be hosting a press conference to address digital assets and how America will secure its position as a leader. And obviously, this piece of news basically is kind of also tied to the sovereign wealth fund, because there's a lot of speculation going on that this sovereign wealth fund will probably in some way, shape, or form also include cryptocurrencies. To the clip that you mentioned, let's see if we can play that without getting an echo from the spaces itself real quick. Let me give this one a try.
I like listening to the clips, especially when you can see the videos, because they kind of reveal things that are not revealed in written. As soon as you give these press statements to a lawyer, they're going to say nothing, or there's not going to be many clues. But when they're speaking live, which is what Trump asked them to do, I always find it more interesting.
Yeah, that's true, but I can't play it, unfortunately, because I'm getting an echo from also running it through the roadcaster.
Okay, no worries. I think one of the interesting things that I got from the clip, whether it was that clip or it was another one, is that they did say that this can be like a liquid fund. So like, I know one of the things that they've been talking about is that, okay, well, we can stick half of TikTok in here, and that can be part of the establishment of the sovereign wealth fund. But it can also be more liquid stuff, liquid assets. So I suspect that's what's got people thinking that it could be Bitcoin. And I think you mentioned Lutnick, the other gentleman who was speaking. I can't remember his name now. He is also known to be like a pro Bitcoin, having a pro Bitcoin position. So I think that'll be very interesting to watch play out. I think it's crazy bullish. Like if you look at it, like, I'm glad you shared those details on Lutnick's kind of position on Bitcoin. Some of those were revealed in an interview he did with Pomp not so long ago. The Bitcoin position, I'm pretty sure, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure from the interview, because I watched it, that's not him speaking about the Cantor Fitzgerald position. That's him speaking about his own position.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure from the interview. So like, this is like a Bitcoin bull as well. So that's interesting to note. Any final reflections here, boys, before we keep it moving? Open to anyone.
Just on that point around the Bitcoin bull stuff, do you think that, I mean, we've seen alts get absolutely wrecked recently. Do you think this is going to be a Bitcoin dominance thing where they just kind of lean into this dominant asset that, that I don't know, it just seems like the digital gold, it's easy to understand for TradFi. Is that the continued angle they'll go? Or do you think there will be some other altcoins that will get included in that if crypto is adopted into that?
I think the focus has to be on Bitcoin if you want to make a significant dent in the US debt, and buy from the US's perspective, buy a cryptocurrency, then you almost need the one with the largest market cap. Yes, we've seen the World Liberty Finance buys for ETH, but like on a federal level, I think that anything but Bitcoin might be too small for them to buy in significant size.
They can't front run this. I mean, surely they can't with the sovereign, like they can't front run the sovereign wealth fund, but with all of their personal buys in World Liberty Fi. Surely they can't do that. That would just be too ridiculous. Funky, your hand is raised. Welcome to the stage, my friend. Resident Bitcoin expert. Am I wrong? It's too ridiculous for them to front run it with World Liberty Fi, right? Or in general, what are your thoughts before we keep it moving?
Is ridiculous or preposterous when it comes to Trump and the administration. So I do think that it largely will focus on Bitcoin. It is interesting, however, that the executive order did say digital assets, broadly speaking, and now they have this whole crypto category of coins that are made in the USA. But just the one thing I want to say real quick, this was something that was talked about in the Blockchain Association member chat. Lutnick was actually one of the early people that they were thinking was going to be the Treasury Secretary, and people were freaking out about Lutnick being Treasury. And I think that's why they gave him Commerce to kind of just placate him, because he was going to have some sort of role, because he was quote unquote a cocaine cowboy who was going to drive the economy off a cliff. So that's just interesting, sort of anecdote. But it's the flagging of percent and then Lutnick on Trump's side. I'm really excited to hear what David Sachs has to say at 2:30. So. And the end of that post, which Legendary did not read, and it's one of David's favorite phrases, is "buckle up."
Buckle up, guys. Sounds pretty exciting. Yeah. So we'll obviously keep a close eye on what is shared at 2:30 p.m. Eastern time today by the crypto czar David Sachs, and we'll share that probably on the timeline later, but also in the show we'll reflect on that tomorrow. So that is that. Let's keep it moving though, Rahim. We have one final headline left for today. Sometimes I wonder whether we talk about ETH too much on the show. Like I really liked ETH. I still kind of like it deep down inside. I think it's relevant, but sometimes I'm wondering if this is my bias. It's not doing well compared to the other stuff, but I feel like this was fairly significant. What do you think, Rahim?
No, I was thinking this yesterday. I just feel like if this, like the way the industry is reacting towards like Bitcoin, I feel like people would stop seeing ETH as like this like smart contract, this like big scaling ecosystem, and they'll just like start seeing this as like the beta play of Bitcoin, and ETH would end up running on like a completely different narrative than what everyone has been like trying to do. I just feel like, I feel like if Bitcoin like starts to run like crazy, people would want to institutions would want to be like, okay, what's our next go-to for that beta play? So I wouldn't be surprised.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's probably fair. But what's the news here? Let's just look at it here. We've got. Do you want to do it, Rahim, or shall I?
Yes. Yeah, I can do it. So World Liberty Fi, just to give like a small TLDR, it was launched back in November. It's essentially a DeFi protocol where you can borrow against your crypto, backed by Donald Trump, Eric Trump, his entire family. Initially, it wasn't doing well. They were planning to raise about $300 million. They ended up only raising 12 million initially. Over time, it got like pretty intricate because Justin Sun came in with like $30 million, ended up adding another 45 million later on. So now he's invested $75 million into that ecosystem, being an official advisor and owning a huge part of the stake. Ever since then, they've been just buying like a lot of different token ecosystems. So the largest holding is on ETH, and then they have like Wrapped Bitcoin, Aave, Link, Athena, a couple of different ecosystems. So yes, yesterday we had Eric Trump posting ETH on his timeline, and there was this whole like speculation because people tracked those wallets by World Liberty Finance and realized that he was moving moving ETH to Coinbase. I thought it was absolutely funny because he was like, yeah, in my opinion, it's a great time to add ETH, and you can thank me later. It's like somebody told him you have to say NFA. So he deleted that part, which I don't think still that makes that much of a deal, because he's still asking people to invest into something. But there was like a bit of FUD, which Brett tweeted out as well, which is like they were moving a lot of ETH to Coinbase wallets. I will, however, say that they've mentioned on their tweets on World Liberty Finance that they will be moving a lot of that crypto around to centralized exchanges, with Coinbase being their official custodian. So obviously, this is all like speculation. Are they trying to dump on our heads, on retail's heads, or they're just like moving it around? It's also important to note that they've been buying ETH for a while. And so their average price is around $3,300 to $3,400. So they are down a good 25 to $30 million. So in some way, I get it. Like, I doubt they're just like dumping on people because it pumped to 2,700 from like 2,100, because they're still down from their initial buy. But yeah, there was like a lot of FUD around, but I just think it's pretty wild that you have Eric Trump, and going back to what Wizard of Soho tweeted, that he is CTOing Ethereum for the rest of the industry.
I have to jump in here on a specific, because Rahim, you mentioned that World Liberty Finance said they're not selling ETH, they're not selling their positions. And I want to read out the specific wording of that because it was so beautiful. They're saying,
do the same thing.
Yeah,
it's really
it's
great.
so good, right? We are making routine movements, I'm sharing this on screen, of our crypto holdings as part of regular treasury management and payment of fees and expenses, and to address working capital requirements. To be clear, we are not selling tokens. We are simply reallocating assets for ordinary business purposes. These actions are intended to be part of maintaining a strong, secure, and efficient treasury. No need to speculate. This is all standard practice for managing operations at World Liberty Finance. I love this. I need to basically use this as copy pasta whenever I'm dumping something. I'm just doing it for ordinary business purposes and for working capital management. I'm not selling the asset.
Yeah,
I did. So just in their defense side, like when you've got that amount of funds, like I can't imagine like Donald and his son just having like a multi-sig between the two of them with that amount of ETH. So I do think like it does make sense to have a proper custodian for something that's effectively so tied to like their sovereign state. And yeah, but like it does ask questions around like the privacy. Like if you've got that much focus on it, sometimes it probably is better to be on a centralized exchange with all these controls in place where prying eyes can't like constantly look over whether you're buying or selling stuff. But yeah, it's interesting to watch.
Yeah, but wasn't Brad in the comments to his post that, by the way, went giga viral with 1.4 million views, making the point that some of these deposits also went according to how where is it? There we go. How Arkham is labeling them to Coinbase's hot wallets and not only to the custodian wallets.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that is accurate. But then I think there's a question mark against Arkham's labeling. I don't know 100% if it's like labeled entirely accurately. So I think that's just the question mark there.
Yeah. Ultimately, I think Brett is right in one of the other comments that he made, that the timing is just looking weird. I mean, you bull post ETH and then you move those holdings no matter what you want to do with them. It's just a weird time to do it like that.
It's just such a bad way to do crime. Like if you're doing like, that's like for someone who comes from forensics, like if you want to commit fraud, do it properly. Like you can't be just like bull posting it and then like selling it on like public wallets.
Maybe just clarify alleged crime.
Alleged. It is fascinating though, because we have this conversation of like moving funds to centralized exchanges. Like we've seen this like same fund around Pump Fund Founder, right? Where they go like, they always end up depositing like millions of dollars worth of Solana. And then the guy goes like, oh, just because we're moving it on exchanges doesn't mean we're selling it. And you're kind of like, okay, what does this mean? So I feel like we keep going down in circles with this whole idea. Is this self-custodian stuff, or they're actually selling? And it's just fascinating to kind of see that.
I think there's a reasonable chance there's custodian, to be fair, in this stuff. I think when the numbers get bigger, I wouldn't be surprised if that's like a service that becomes very, very helpful to you. But yeah, we never know. I thought it was an entertaining episode nevertheless, and all of these things kind of tying together, right? Like the sovereign wealth fund announcement, this ETH bull posting stuff, going into the Coinbase stuff. So it's like there's just a bunch of things coalescing, which made it quite entertaining, which is at least in part why we are here every day. It's can't make this stuff up. It's good stuff. It's entertaining. And we're glad that we can cover it every day with you. That is our show for today. Hope you enjoyed it. Just a reminder, we do this every single day, Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern time for 1 hour. We're live on X Video, YouTube, and you can catch us on Apple and Spotify podcasts, which actually more and more people are doing, which we enjoy. Thanks so much for joining us. As always, thank you to legendary Sammy and Rahim for co-hosting with me. Thanks to our contributors up on stage. We had Funky and Oxy contributing today. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Take care. And we will see you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.